I overheard my wife mock our intimacy to her sister, so I planned a cold public divorce showdown and walked away to reclaim my dignity in life. It was supposed to be a surprise. I had finished work early and decided to head home to spend some quality time with my wife of 8 years. Our relationship had felt distant lately, both of us consumed by demanding careers. I thought showing up unexpectedly with her favorite takeout might reignite some of the connection we seemed to be losing. As I quietly entered the house, I heard her voice drifting down from the bedroom upstairs. She was laughing loudly, clearly on the phone with someone. I paused in the hallway, not wanting to interrupt, when her words stopped me cold. I know, right? It's honestly pathetic. 8 years of marriage and he still can't last 5 minutes. I've just accepted that's my life now, she said, her voice dripping with mockery. Remember when I told you about our anniversary trip? I was so frustrated I almost screamed. He thinks he's this amazing lover, but I'm just counting ceiling tiles, waiting for it to be over. The takeout bag slipped from my fingers and landed silently on the carpeted floor. My ears were ringing as I heard her continue, sharing intimate details of our marriage with, who I now realized was her sister. Oh, I've tried everything, suggesting things, guiding him. He's hopeless. I've just gotten really good at faking it. The worst part is how proud he looks afterward, completely clueless. Each word felt like a knife, not just the humiliating details she was sharing, but the utter contempt in her tone. This wasn't venting to a trusted confidant. This was mockery of the cruelest kind. I know I should be more direct with him, she went on. But honestly, what's the point? It's not like he's suddenly going to improve after all these years. Besides, everything else in our marriage is fine. The house, our social life, our finances. I've just accepted this as the trade-off. I stood paralyzed, unable to process what I was hearing. The woman upstairs sounded nothing like the person I had shared my life with. The callousness, the casual cruelty, the reduction of our most intimate moments to a joke. It felt surreal. You're right, she continued, her laughter subsiding. I should stop complaining. At least he's reliable, unlike that disaster you dated last year. Anyway, we're still on for lunch tomorrow, right? I need to run. He'll be home in a couple of hours. As she ended the call, I silently retrieved the takeout bags and slipped back out the front door. I couldn't face her, not yet, not while the echo of her words still rang in my ears. I needed time to think, to process what had just happened. Sitting in my car in a nearby park, a wave of emotions crashed over me: humiliation, rage, heartbreak. Questions swirled through my mind. How long had she felt this way? How many people knew? Her sister, her friends, maybe even her parents. The thought of sitting across from her family at gatherings while they secretly pitied or mocked me was unbearable. What hurt most wasn't even the criticism itself. It was the betrayal of trust, the public sharing of something so private, the complete disrespect for me as her partner. Our marriage, which I had believed was built on mutual love and respect, suddenly seemed like a cruel illusion. As the initial shock faded, one thing became crystal clear: I could not, would not, remain in a marriage with someone who held me in such contempt. The life we had built together, which I had valued so deeply, now felt hollow. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I returned home 3 hours later, having composed myself enough to face her without immediately revealing what I had overheard. The drive around town had given me time to reflect on our relationship from a new perspective. As painful as it was to admit, this wasn't the first sign of disrespect I had experienced. There had been subtle indicators throughout our marriage: dismissive comments disguised as jokes, eye rolls when she thought I wasn't looking, the way she sometimes interrupted me when I spoke with friends. When I walked through the door, she greeted me with a smile that now seemed hollow. "You're home early," she said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. I wondered if she had to force herself to kiss me, if even that simple gesture was an act. "Just finished up sooner than expected," I replied, studying her face for any hint of guilt or discomfort. There was none. She had become too comfortable with her deception. "I'm making pasta for dinner," she continued, turning back to the kitchen. "How was your day?" The mundane conversation carried on as if nothing had changed. While inside, I felt a growing disconnect between the life I thought we had and the reality that had just been revealed. I excused myself to shower, needing space to think about my next steps. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her steady breathing while my mind raced. I couldn't confront her immediately, not without a plan. This revelation had exposed a fundamental lack of respect that couldn't be fixed with a heated argument or tearful apologies. No, this required something more definitive. Over the next few days, I maintained the appearance of normalcy while carefully observing her behavior. I noticed how often she was on her phone, always angling the screen away from me. One afternoon, while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I would do. I checked her messages. What I found confirmed my worst fears. The conversation with her sister was just the tip of the iceberg. There were numerous exchanges, with friends, where she shared intimate details about our life. In one particularly painful thread with her college friends, they were giving her advice on how to handle my inadequacies, complete with crude jokes and suggestions that made my stomach turn. I put the phone down, feeling sick. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a single complaint shared in frustration. This was a pattern of disrespect that had apparently been going on for years. Our most private moments had become comedy material for her social circle. That night, she suggested we watch a movie together. As we sat on the couch with her head resting on my shoulder, I couldn't help wondering if this physical closeness was as much of a performance as everything else now seemed to be. Did she feel anything genuine for me anymore? Or was I simply the reliable partner who provided stability while failing to satisfy her in ways she freely discussed with others? I made an excuse to go to bed early, unable to maintain the pretense of normalcy any longer. Lying in the dark, I made a decision. This marriage was over, but I wouldn't exit it without careful preparation. If she could be calculating about our relationship, so could I. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Once she had left for her job, I began researching divorce attorneys. I needed someone who would understand the situation and help me navigate what would undoubtedly be a complex separation after 8 years of building a life together. By the end of the day, I had an appointment scheduled with a highly rated lawyer for the following afternoon. I also started documenting our financial situation, taking inventory of shared assets and accounts. If there was one thing I had learned from this painful revelation, it was that I could no longer afford to be naive. The woman I had trusted completely had betrayed that trust in the most personal way possible. Now I needed to protect myself with the same thoroughness with which she had humiliated me. The meeting with the divorce attorney was eye-opening. I sat across from her in a modern office downtown, carefully explaining my situation while omitting the most humiliating details. She listened attentively, making occasional notes, then outlined my options. 8 years of marriage means this won't be simple, she explained. But if you're certain this is what you want, we can begin preparing immediately. I was certain, more certain than I had been about anything in years. I recommend gathering documentation discreetly, she continued. Bank statements, investment accounts, property information. Also secure your personal items and any family heirlooms that are particularly important to you. I left her office with a detailed checklist and a strange sense of calm. Having a concrete plan made this nightmare feel manageable. Over the next 2 weeks, I methodically checked items off the list while maintaining an outward appearance of normalcy at home. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank and began transferring reasonable amounts of my income into it. I scanned important documents when my wife was out and stored the digital copies securely. I retrieved family heirlooms from our safe deposit box under the pretense of showing photos to a colleague interested in antiques. Each step was calculated, each move deliberately unremarkable. I even maintained our regular routine: Wednesday night dinners out, weekend brunches with friends, evening walks around the neighborhood. I became an actor in my own life, playing the role of devoted husband while dismantling the foundations of our marriage behind the scenes. The performance was exhausting. Each morning I woke up beside her, fighting the urge to confront her. Each night I lay awake planning my exit while she slept peacefully, unaware that everything was about to change. What made it bearable were the occasional reminders of why I was doing this, like when her sister called one evening, and my wife took the phone to the backyard, laughing a little too loudly at something I couldn't hear, or when she received text messages that made her smile secretly at her phone, quickly switching screens when I entered the room. In a particularly revealing moment, we attended a work function with several of her colleagues. I noticed the strange looks, fleeting glances followed by whispers, uncomfortable smiles. When I approached, it became painfully obvious that they too were privy to details about our private life. How many people had she told? How far had these humiliating stories spread? 3 weeks into my preparations, an unexpected opportunity arose. My wife mentioned she had been invited on a girls' weekend with her college friends the following month. "It's been ages since we've all gotten together," she said excitedly. "Everyone's flying in from different cities. We've booked an Airbnb by the beach." I encouraged her to go, even suggesting she extend her stay if possible. "You deserve a break," I said, my supportive tone masking the calculation behind my words. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Her absence would give me the ideal window to finalize my arrangements. As the date of her trip approached, I accelerated my preparations. I secured a furnished apartment across town with a 6-month lease, arranged for my mail to be redirected, and prepared to move my essential belongings while she was away. My attorney had the divorce papers ready, waiting only for my signal to proceed. Everything was in place for a clean break. No dramatic confrontation, no messy scene, just a decisive end to a relationship poisoned by disrespect and humiliation. Or so I thought. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Her sister was in town unexpectedly and suggested we all meet for dinner. I initially tried to decline, making up an excuse about work, but my wife insisted. "It'll be good for you to take a break," she said, her concerned tone now seeming patronizing in light of what I knew. I reluctantly agreed, unaware that the evening would completely alter my carefully constructed exit strategy. The restaurant was upscale, the kind we reserved for special occasions. The irony wasn't lost on me, celebrating with the very people who had been laughing at my expense behind closed doors. I steeled myself as we approached the table where her sister was already seated with her husband. "There you are," her sister exclaimed, standing to embrace my wife. When she turned to hug me, I couldn't help stiffening slightly. Did she realize I was the subject of their mocking conversations? Did she see me as the pathetic, inadequate man her sister had described? Dinner began with casual conversation, work updates, family news, harmless gossip about mutual friends. I participated minimally, observing the dynamics with new awareness. The subtle glances between the sisters, the occasional inside joke that prompted knowing smiles, all took on sinister meaning. Halfway through the main course, my wife's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled, and showed it to her sister, who immediately suppressed a laugh. "What's so funny?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Nothing important," my wife dismissed, tucking her phone away. "Just a meme from a friend." Her sister's husband caught my eye briefly before looking away, a flash of something, perhaps pity, crossing his face. Did he know too? Was he part of this circle of mockery, or just another bystander watching the humiliation unfold? As the evening progressed and the wine flowed freely, inhibitions loosened. During dessert, her sister made a seemingly innocuous comment about stamina during their morning runs. "Some of us just aren't built for endurance," she said, glancing at me with barely concealed amusement. My wife nearly choked on her wine, covering her mouth as she composed herself. Her sister's husband shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in his dessert. That moment crystallized everything. This wasn't just casual venting between siblings. This was an ongoing joke, a shared amusement at my expense that had permeated their entire family dynamic. I wasn't just a husband with a private shortcoming. I was a punchline. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment alone to process the growing rage and humiliation. In the privacy of the bathroom stall, I took several deep breaths. My carefully laid plans for a clean, emotionless exit suddenly seemed insufficient. The methodical approach I had been following no longer satisfied the burning need for vindication growing inside me. When I returned to the table, I wore a mask of calm that concealed the storm beneath. I participated in the remainder of the evening with newfound purpose, even initiating conversations and laughing at their jokes. My performance was flawless, the unsuspecting husband, oblivious to the fact that he was the butt of a family joke. On the drive home, my wife chatted happily about the evening and mentioned plans for another dinner before her sister left town. "Actually," I said casually, "I was thinking of hosting them at our place, maybe this weekend." She seemed surprised but pleased. "That would be great. I'm sure they'd love that." Little did she know I had no intention of a friendly dinner party. What I was planning was a reckoning. Back home, while she prepared for bed, I texted my attorney, changing our agreed timeline. The quiet disappearance I had planned, moving out while she was on her girls' trip and leaving divorce papers with a dispassionate note, no longer felt adequate. This humiliation hadn't been private, neither would its consequences be. That night, I lay awake formulating a new approach. The quiet exit would be replaced with something more fitting, a confrontation that would ensure she understood exactly why our marriage was ending, preferably with witnesses to her humiliation, an eye for an eye. As she slept peacefully beside me, unaware of the shifting tides, I finalized my mental plan. I would accelerate everything: the asset division, the apartment preparations, the legal documentation. What had been scheduled to take another month would now be compressed into days. By the time her sister and brother-in-law came for dinner that weekend, I would be ready to expose the truth and walk away from this marriage with my dignity intact. Let them all witness the consequences of treating someone's trust and love as a source of entertainment. Morning came with a renewed sense of purpose. I kissed my wife goodbye as she left for work, the gesture empty of affection. The countdown had begun. 3 days until dinner, 3 days until everything changed. Those 3 days were a blur of purposeful activity. I took a business trip that was actually spent moving essential belongings to my new apartment. I met with my attorney to finalize the divorce papers. I transferred appropriate portions of our joint accounts into my separate account, following my lawyer's guidance on what was legally permissible. I even retrieved items from our safe deposit box that held sentimental value. Photos from before our marriage, my grandparents' watches, letters from my parents. Each action was calculated, each move deliberate. I wasn't just ending a marriage, I was reclaiming my dignity. The day of the dinner arrived. I left work early to prepare, stopping at an upscale grocery store for ingredients for an elaborate meal. The irony wasn't lost on me, putting such effort into what would essentially be a funeral dinner for our marriage. But it felt important to maintain the facade until the moment of revelation. I spent the afternoon cooking, something I often did to relieve stress. The rhythmic chopping, the precise measurements, the gradual building of flavors, all helped focus my thoughts and steel my resolve. By 6 o'clock, the table was set with our best china, candles were lit, and the house smelled of roasting meat and herbs. My wife arrived home first, surprised by the transformation. "This is beautiful," she said, kissing my cheek. "You didn't have to go to such trouble." "It's a special occasion," I replied, handing her a glass of wine. "Why don't you relax while I finish up? They'll be here soon." Her sister and brother-in-law arrived 30 minutes later, bearing expensive wine and compliments about the aroma wafting from the kitchen. We settled into easy conversation, the kind that flows naturally among people who have known each other for years. To an outside observer, we would have appeared the perfect picture of family harmony. Dinner progressed smoothly through the first course. I played the gracious host, filling wine glasses and encouraging everyone to eat. It wasn't until we were midway through the main course that I set my plan in motion. "I've been meaning to ask," I said casually, looking at my wife's sister. "When did the jokes about my performance in the bedroom begin? Was it something specific that prompted it, or just general disappointment my wife shared with you?" The silence that followed was absolute. Her sister froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Her husband stared intently at his plate. My wife's face drained of color as the implications sank in. "I don't know what you're talking about," her sister finally stammered, looking to my wife for guidance. "I think you do," I continued, my voice eerily calm. "The can't last 5 minutes jokes, the ceiling tile counting anecdotes, the anniversary trip disaster, all those private details about our intimate life that have apparently provided such entertainment for your family gatherings." My wife put down her glass with a shaking hand. "How did you—" "About 3 weeks ago," I said. "I came home early to surprise you. Instead, I got to listen to you mock our marriage to your sister." I turned to her brother-in-law. "I'm curious, how much detail did she share with you? Did you get the full report, or just the highlights?" He had the decency to look ashamed, avoiding eye contact entirely. "It wasn't like that," my wife said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was just venting, just sisters talking." "It was humiliation," I interrupted, finally allowing some anger to surface. "Deliberate, repeated humiliation. And not just with your sister, with your friends, your CO workers. How many people have you turned our private struggles into entertainment for?" The dinner table had transformed from a setting of forced conviviality into the scene of an execution, the death of a marriage laid bare for all to witness. I stood and walked to the sideboard where I had placed my briefcase earlier. Opening it, I withdrew the envelope containing the divorce papers and placed it on the table between us. I spent the last 3 weeks preparing to end our marriage with dignity, quietly, privately. Then I realized you hadn't afforded me the same courtesy. You made our intimacy public. It seemed fitting that our separation should be as well. Her sister began to rise. "We should go—" "No," I said firmly. "Stay. You've been privy to the most private aspects of our marriage. You might as well witness its end." Turning back to my wife, whose face now showed the first traces of tears, I continued. "Everything is prepared. The papers just need your signature. I've divided our assets fairly, well within legal guidelines. I've already moved out. As of today, this house is yours until we sell it, as outlined in the agreement." Her hand trembled as she reached for the envelope but didn't open it. "You can't be serious. 8 years of marriage and you're throwing it away over one conversation? Not one conversation, I corrected. Years of disrespect. Years of mockery behind my back. Years of pretending to love someone you actually held in contempt. The conversation I overheard was just the final evidence I needed. I picked up my wine glass, considered it for a moment, then set it down untouched. I deserve better than to be someone's punchline. I deserve a partner who respects me, especially when I'm not in the room. With that, I retrieved my jacket and the small overnight bag I had hidden in the hall closet earlier. I'll have my attorney contact yours once you've retained one. Everything else is explained in the documents. As I walked toward the door, my wife finally found her voice. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk about this. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the tableau of shocked faces. There's nothing left to say. You've already said it all, just not to my face. And with that, I walked out the door, closing it firmly behind me on 8 years of marriage and the woman who had made me a joke. 6 months passed in a blur of paperwork, mediation sessions, and rebuilding. The divorce proceeded more smoothly than I had anticipated. Perhaps she felt too guilty or embarrassed to fight the generous but firm terms I proposed. Our house sold quickly, our assets were divided, and our lives untangled with surprising efficiency. The apartment I had rented became a sanctuary, minimalist and uncluttered by memories. It represented a fresh start. Each piece of furniture I selected, each decoration I hung, was a small act of reclaiming my identity. There is something powerful about creating a space that is entirely your own, unmarked by compromise or shared history. The initial weeks were the hardest. Habits formed over 8 years don't dissolve overnight. I would catch myself buying her favorite snacks at the grocery store, or turning to share a thought with someone who wasn't there. The muscle memory of marriage lingered long after the relationship ended. Friends chose sides, as they inevitably do. Some I lost, others surprised me with their loyalty. New friendships formed as I rebuilt my social life. Genuine connections based on mutual respect rather than shared history or obligation. Professional therapy helped. I hadn't realized how deeply the humiliation had affected me until I started talking about it with someone objective. The betrayal went beyond the mockery itself. It was the years of performative intimacy, the knowledge that the person closest to me had harbored such contempt while pretending affection. 3 months after our separation, the text messages started. At first, they were practical questions about mail or forgotten items. Then they evolved into something more reflective. I miss you, one read, arriving late on a Friday night when I suspected she had been drinking. I didn't respond. I never meant to hurt you. It was just stupid talk. It didn't mean anything. This one arrived on what would have been our anniversary. I blocked her number after that. Through mutual friends, I heard snippets about her life. She had moved to a smaller apartment closer to work. She had started therapy too. Her circle of friends had contracted significantly. Apparently, the revelation of how she had treated me caused many to reconsider their relationship with her. People who had laughed along with her mockery suddenly wondered what she said about them behind closed doors. Her sister reached out once, an awkward coffee meeting where she attempted an apology that sounded more like justification. She was just frustrated, she explained, as if that excused years of humiliation. She didn't know how to talk to you about it. She found plenty of ways to talk about it, I replied, just not with the one person who needed to hear it. I paid for our coffees and left, feeling no satisfaction from her discomfort but no obligation to ease it either. 5 months into my new life, I received an unexpected email from my former brother-in-law. Unlike the others, his message was straightforward and dignified. I watched my wife and her sister disrespect your marriage for years and said nothing. I was complicit in their behavior, and for that, I apologize. The way you handled yourself at that final dinner showed more character than I have demonstrated in our entire acquaintance. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your actions prompted me to reflect on my own marriage and the kind of partner I want to be. His message affected me more than all the others combined. There was something validating about having a witness acknowledge both the wrong done to me and the dignity with which I had addressed it. On a crisp autumn evening, exactly 6 months after I walked out of my marriage, I met someone new. Not a romantic connection. I wasn't ready for that yet. But a friendship that began with genuine conversation and evolved through mutual interests. For the first time since the divorce, I found myself laughing without restraint, sharing thoughts without calculation, enjoying company without weariness. That night, returning to my apartment, I realized something fundamental had shifted. The anger that had propelled me through the divorce had dissipated, Replaced not with forgiveness, I wasn't there yet, perhaps never would be, but with indifference. The power my ex-wife once held over my self-image had evaporated. The final communication came from her lawyer, a request to meet and discuss adjustments to our settlement. Apparently, she was struggling financially more than anticipated. My attorney advised accepting the meeting, if only to forestall potential legal complications. I agreed to a brief encounter at my lawyer's office, steeling myself for manipulation or drama. Instead, I found someone I barely recognized, subdued, anxious, clearly uncomfortable in the formal setting. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice lacking the confidence I remembered. "I know you don't owe me anything. What do you need?" I kept my tone neutral, businesslike. She explained her situation: reduced hours at work, unexpected medical expenses, difficulty maintaining the lifestyle our dual income had supported. She wasn't asking for changes to the settlement terms, just an extension on certain payments. Before my lawyer could advise me, I made my decision. The original terms stand, but we can adjust the timeline. It wasn't generosity motivating me, but the desire to close this chapter completely without lingering attachments of any kind, not even resentment. As we concluded our business, she hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, I regret what I did. Not just because of how it ended, but because I never gave us a real chance. Pride, or cowardice or something, stopped me from having honest conversations with you. I nodded, acknowledging her words without offering absolution. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, and meant it. The desire to see her suffer had faded, replaced by a simple wish to have her firmly in my past. Walking out of that meeting, I felt the last weight lift. The marriage that had defined 8 years of my life was truly over, not just legally, but emotionally. The betrayal that had seemed so devastating had ultimately freed me from a relationship founded on deception. Some lessons come at a tremendous cost. This one had taught me to value honesty above comfort, respect above longevity, and self-worth above others' approval. I'd lost a wife, but I had reclaimed my dignity, and in the calculus of a well-lived life, that was a trade worth making.